We are back. We got another great jam-packed episode. We're going to talk Javy Baez. The time has come. We're finally going to do our deep dive on Javier Baez, probably the most controversial player currently on the Detroit Tigers, at least within this fan base, probably honestly in all fan bases. Very controversial player. We're going to take our deep dive on him. We also got some news and notes. We're going to talk MLB draft lottery. We're going to talk Andrew Chafin officially opts out. We talked about that a couple days ago, but we're going to talk about it again now that it's officially official. We got some stuff to talk about. All right, all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I am, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, November 8th. Happy Election Day. Go out and vote. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Okay, yeah, happy Election Day. Be sure to go out and vote because you can. Because yeah, well, I guess if you're from north of the border, I know I have some Canadian listeners, so I guess you can't vote in our election. But if you're a Michigander, go out and vote. Do your part. Okay, we got some stuff to talk about. All right, we got some stuff to talk about. Like I said, we're gonna talk MLB draft lottery. We're gonna talk. We can just do Andrew Chafin really quickly right now because that's super fast. And we had the big discussion about Chafin yesterday, 2 days ago. It's all blending together. But Andrew Chafin officially opts out. We had heard from a source that, well, I'm not an insider. Um, Evan Petzold heard from a source that he was going to opt out, made that information public. We all knew this was coming, but it is official. He has officially declined his player option to play for the Detroit Tigers in 2023. So Andrew Chafin will become a free agent. According to a couple of beat writers in town, he is looking for a long-term deal. So there you go. That's really all there is to it. I'm not even sure if he's gonna get a ton AAV wise. He'll get, he's not gonna sign for $2 million a year or anything. He's gonna get a legitimate offer. But I think he might even take like the same AAV or even slightly less AAV. That AAV is just how much money you make per season, by the way. I get some questions about like the terminology I use, and I don't want anyone to feel out of the loop with the lingo that I use. So I feel the need to explain sometimes. But so he might even take a little bit less money per year in order to get a longer term deal. Because if you think about it, the dude has bounced around a ton over the last 2 or 3 seasons, right? He's been traded and re-signed places and deadline shopped and all that. I mean, he really has bounced around quite a bit lately. So it doesn't surprise me that he wants somewhere where he's kind of somewhat confident that he's going to be playing there relatively long term. So I think that makes sense to me. And when I heard that was kind of his mission in free agency, that made sense to me, and I will take that as truth until proven otherwise because it makes sense to me. So we can some kind of expect that. I think we can expect that from Andrew Chafin in free agency. And like we said when we were talking about it a few days ago, it's not impossible. It's not off the table for the Tigers to then try and re-sign him. I just don't think that's a very high priority. I don't think that's very likely. You can hear us talk about it a couple of days ago when it first got announced that he was going to decline, or you can go to the deep dive that we had on him a couple of weeks ago, probably now, and get a full breakdown of his season and what to expect in 2023. But it probably won't be with the Detroit Tigers. The other thing I want to talk about is Lou Whitaker. I think I missed that in the cold open, so that's my fault. But Lou Whitaker is not on the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee ballot. That's a lot of words. Basically, there is the Era Committee. They have their own ballot of people that didn't get in to the 10 years or whatever it is now, it changes so much. Didn't get in your actual Hall of Fame ballot timeline. You don't make it. You go to the era committee, and they can basically vote you in on like a second chance ballot almost. And you still count as a Hall of Famer just like everybody else. It's not like you're any different from all the other Hall of Famers. So kind of a cool thing. I actually like the idea. Um, I don't like the execution of the idea up to this point. It seems pretty ridiculous to me that you have so many players that are like eligible to be on the ballot or that you want in the ballot, and if you don't get it once, then you're like 5 years away from being on it ever like again, and it just seems like too much time in between. I know they have a revolving door of a lot of players they need to get onto that ballot, but still, it just seems weird that I don't know if you're on the ballot, shouldn't you? It's like it's the second chance ballot. You should just be on the ballot. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. Lou Whitaker's not on it this year. The likes of Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, Kurt Schilling, Fred McGriff, Crime Dog, best nickname in the history of baseball, by the way. So you have some prolific names on there and definitely some fascinating conversations that I would love to have with y'all as we get closer to the voting for that or the induction of the Hall of Fame. I would love to share those thoughts that I have about it with y'all, and we will certainly do that, like I said, as we get closer to Hall of Fame voting season, which will be this winter. But no, Lou, it's a crime. It's an absolute crime. It's a joke. It's embarrassing, and it's in my opinion, and nationally it's not looked at this way, but in my opinion, as a Detroit sports person, Lou Whitaker not being in the Baseball Hall of Fame is truly one of the biggest crimes in sports. And I firmly believe that. This is not a conversation of, oh, does he really deserve it or whatnot? This is a slam dunk. There is no metric. There is no resume. There's no you compare awards. There is nothing you can point to, a ring, nothing you can point to in Lou Whitaker's career and be like, that's why he doesn't deserve to get in. And there's a million reasons that you can point to and say, that's why he's a Hall of Famer. It's a joke. It's a joke. If you want to get super nerdy with it, his 75 baseball reference WAR is literally higher than Alan Trammell's. Fun fact. It's also way higher than Jack Morris's, but that's a whole different conversation. I'm not saying that anybody, like, I'm not saying Lou Whitaker is the threshold. I'm saying it's ridiculous because he's that much higher than what the threshold should be. I'm not saying everybody below Lou just isn't a Hall of Famer. No, Tram absolutely deserves to be in Cooperstown and whatnot. It's ridiculous. There are, I think, double digit, close to second baseman with lower career WARs. And if you go to the Tigers Twitter account, they tweeted out a graphic that had every single player that is in the Hall of Fame with less F WAR or less B WAR rather than Lou Whitaker. And it is a laundry list. I'm not talking about like 10, 11, 12, 13, 20, 30 names. Like this is a laundry list of a graphic. And it's really too bad. So he will be eligible again at some point. I think he's 2 years away. It's either next year or the year after. I'm pretty sure somebody explained it. But it will not be this season. So we're another year or two at least away from Lou Whitaker being in Cooperstown, unfortunately. Okay, let's get into the MLB draft lottery, and then we'll do our Javy Baez breakdown for the rest of the show. But first, I got to tell y'all about our friends over at Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting info, stats, and news and analysis this season. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From basketball, football, soccer, esports, they've got it all at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find all of those at BetOnline as well. They're happy and they're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, everybody. Welcome back here to segment 2. Is that what we're on? Yeah. Second segment here at Locked On Tigers. Sorry, I'm distracted. I'm looking at this graphic. There might be 100 names on this list of Hall of Famers with a lower F4. B-War. I keep saying that incorrectly. Premise still stands. There might be 100 names on here. Like, this graphic is insane. Tony Gwynn, less WAR. Tim Raines, less WAR. Gary Carter, less WAR. Barry Larkin, Alan Trammell, Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter, one vote away from unanimous. Less F4. B-War. Golly. Then Lou Whitaker. It's crazy, ain't it? 75.1 career B-War, not in the Hall of Fame. What a joke. Anyway, let's talk about what? Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the MLB draft lottery. So those odds were officially released. The Detroit Tigers have they have the fourth highest odds technically. However, there are 3 teams that are tied for the highest odds. So they're actually sixth they have the 6th worst record in baseball, right? So as it stands right now, the MLB draft lottery, the coverage of it will be on Tuesday, December 6th. That will be right in the middle of winter meetings. So that'll be a super fun week. I'll be honest with you, I'm such a nerd, and I say this every year. Well, I think I've only been the host for 1 December, but I tell everybody I know every year that winter meetings is like one of my favorite weeks of the entire year. So much goes on. There's so much fun stuff that comes out of it. I absolutely love it. And I'm disappointed that it was kind of robbed for us, honestly, the last 2 years with the lockout and then with COVID the year before that. We really haven't had a true winter meetings in a few years now, and I cannot wait for it. But we got a new thing added to winter meetings with the MLB draft lottery. The Nationals, the A's, and the Pirates will have a 16.5% chance at the number 1 overall pick. The Cincinnati Reds will have a 13.2% chance at the number 1 overall pick. The Kansas City Royals will have a 10% chance. And your Detroit Tigers will have a 7.5% chance. Then you get into the Rangers, 5.5, Rockies, 3.9, Marlins, 2.7, and then Angels on through the rest of the non-playoff teams are all under a 2% chance. So kind of exciting, right? I mean, look, I cover Locked On Red Wings too. And I am a diehard of all 4 of these teams, as you can see behind me every day and on the wall if you watch on YouTube. I'm very aware at the stigma that is Detroit sports lottery luck. I'm very aware. And like, we got Cade, and that's awesome. And Cade's great. I'm actually recording this right after the Pistons came back and beat the Thunder on Monday night. But look, I've lived through the Red Wings lottery luck. I understand it scares people, but the only time the lottery is truly scary for me is when you have the highest odds. If you don't have the highest odds, especially in this setting, in this format where 3 teams are tied for the highest odds, and then after that it goes down like 3% at a time, right? Like, I don't even expect a top 5 pick. So, like, if we end up getting one, beautiful. That's dope. And if we don't, that's what I expected. And if we do jump up, anything above 6 is just, icing, frosting, whatever. But really, the only stress comes from being one of those 3 teams at 16.5% because you are tied for the best odds. Anything that's not number 1 is going to be viewed as a disappointment. So kind of a fun thing. We'll talk about that as we get closer to the date, December 6th from winter meetings. So that'll be super cool. Okay, I think that's it for news and notes. Let's talk about Javy Baez. Let's talk Turkey. Oh boy. Yeah. This one was one I was pushing off, not intentionally because I don't want to have the Javy Baez conversation. It's a fascinating one, and I definitely want to have the conversation with you all about it. But it's one that I obviously it is going to be controversial because Javy Baez is the most controversial player on this team. That's just honestly an objective truth. And he got the big money, relatively speaking, last season and all that. And he showed up and he didn't perform. And before you say anything about, if you're just voicing your own opinion on Javi, that's fine. Obviously, that's welcome in this community, in this relationship we have. I want everybody to feel like they can speak their minds on players. But if you're reacting to my analysis of Javi, I want you to please wait until the end. Okay, I want you to please just hear me out because it's a roller coaster. And I think that everybody, because there were such big expectations put on him and because he got the contract he got, everybody kind of looked around, and after the season, it's like no one had anything positive to say about Javy whatsoever. And everything that possibly could have touched Javy Baez was a negative, and it was all terrible. And that nothing good comes out of Javy Baez. I think was a real, and still is a real legitimate part of the fan base feels that way. And I again, it's a roller coaster. I'm not going to be an apologist. There is plenty that was brutal, but it's not like we gave 20 whatever million AAV to a dude that's like should be DFA'd or like isn't a major league talent. Like there's still a lot there. Okay. So for starters, we're going to start with the defense because it was brutal. Javy widely throughout his career has been considered to be one of the better defensive shortstops out there. However, consistently, year in and year out, has had troubles with throwing errors. That's something that we knew. That's something that I think most people, if you were even remotely familiar with Javy Baez's career, were pretty familiar with and pretty much understood. He has great range. He has the intangibles to be, I got to choose my words very carefully throughout this whole thing. He has the ability to be a plus defender at shortstop. He has shown it. He has put up some of the most unbelievable defensive seasons at shortstop that we have seen in the recorded like analytical era of baseball. His 2019 at shortstop, he had 31 defensive run saves at shortstop and 31 outs above average at shortstop. That is remarkable. That is otherworldly, right? That's platinum glove type stuff, right? This season, he had a -5 defensive run save, the first time he's had a negative at shortstop since 2015 when he only played 45 innings at shortstop. If you remember, he came up as a getting pretty legitimate playing time at second base earlier on in his Cubs career. And 2015, he had some injury stuff too, actually, and had some minor league stints. Anyway, and had a +2 outs above average at shortstop, which in 2021, he had a +1, but then in 2020, he had a +9. 2019, we already talked about. And then the 3 years before that were 3, 5, and 2 at outs above average. So, look, I understand. It's frustrating. And honestly, the reason why it's frustrating is A, because of the contract, and we'll get to that in a second, but B, because you know that he has the ability to be an elite defensive shortstop. We all know it. We've seen it happen. We've seen him win Gold Gloves. We know that that's possible. And yet, his first year in Detroit, he leads the league in errors. Frustrating, obviously. Now, what to do in the future with that? There's a camp out there that wants to move him to second base. And I can't say that it's a bad idea. I don't think anyone can. I would not hold my breath. I would not say that that's like a super, guaranteed thing to happen. But if it did happen, I would not be surprised and I would absolutely welcome it. Again, this is a dude that has logged a lot of innings at second base and a lot of really positive defensive innings at second base. has not had a negative DRS at second base since his rookie year in 2014, and has never had an outs above average of lower than 3 at second base in his entire career. And that's, this isn't tiny sample sizes either. This is over 300 innings for every single year at second base since 2016. 2021 with the Mets, he played 285 innings, so I guess that's the lowest one. But this is legitimate sample size: 700 innings, 500 innings, almost 400 innings. Positive defensively at second base. I'm fine with it. If that's what ends up happening, I'm totally cool with it. You bring in a really solid defensive shortstop. And the thing is, if you don't bring in a good defensive shortstop, it's not happening. Then Javy will stay at second, and they'll figure out whatever they're going to do with the person they bring in. That whatever they sign someone that can play short, but he's not as good as Javy. Okay, he'll play second then. And we still have Jonathan Schoop. I think for my money, Jonathan Schoop won't be on the team in 2023. I think they're either going to cut him or try and trade him for a very low asking price. But it's a very real possibility that Jonathan Schoop is on this team. That would not be surprising either. So with the defensive lineup of Javy Baez, currently, as it stands, he's going to be your shortstop again. And you're just going to have to hope that he doesn't make a ton of throwing errors again. I don't know. I'm not the dude with the solutions. I'm not in Javy's ear. I can't be like, hey man, just like throw the ball better. I don't know. Like I don't. That's just gonna be it. If the season started today, if 2023 started today, you have Jonathan Schoop at second. You have Javy at short again. And the only way that changes is if you bring in a plus defensive shortstop, which I'm fine with. Go for it. Let's make this middle infield just really sound defensively. I'm down. But that requires a move to be made. All right? Not great. A lot of throwing errors. Very frustrating. Objectively not good. No one should tell you otherwise. Let's get into the offense of Javy Baez. We'll do that right after this. What is up, everybody? Third and final segment here of Locked On Tigers. Okay, so we're talking Javy. Talked about his defense. Talked about the throwing errors. The range is still there. Obviously, negative DRS. We talked about that, but still a relatively solid outs above average. And he has the ability. He is athletic. He made phenomenal plays. He made game-saving plays. That did happen. Like we talked about it on here. We watched every game. It wasn't all just catastrophically terrible, but you can't lead the league in errors and have like almost all of them be throwing errors. You can't. And if that requires a move to second, then it requires a move to second. Not against it at all. Okay. Offensively. All right. Really rough start to the season, as we are all very aware. I don't have to be the one to remind you of that. I don't have to be the one to tell you that. Not a great season offensively as a whole. Now, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it and talk about some of the stuff that's still salvageable, and then we can talk about how it's going to look in 2023. But objectively, this season did not go as planned for Javy. A 238 batting average, people talk about, he's a bad contact hitter or whatever all the time. He has a 260 career batting average. For the Tigers in 2022, it was 238. He has a 302 career on base percentage. In 2022, it was a 278. And then the slugging percentage is really the biggest thing that dropped off. He has a career 203 isolated power, which is very solid, especially for a middle infielder. Incredibly solid. That's really good. His ISO for us was 155. His slugging percentage was under 400. A 90 WRC plus. Not great. So, what is salvageable about Javy Baez? First half, second half is one thing that a lot of people looked at. And I think there's something to that. I don't think it's as simple as in the second half, he was way better than the first half. I don't. I will tell you that it was certainly better. A 626 OPS in the first half and a 723 OPS in the second half. But you still needed to be higher than a 723 OPS, right? If his season number was a 723, we'd probably look at him differently because, again, as a fan base, as all fan bases do, you're comparing it to other Tigers, which was not good. A 723 OPS would have been, what, just behind Hossie for highest on the team? This was such a catastrophic failure of an offense that a 723 OPS across the whole season would have looked a lot different than his sub 700. But it's still not what you paid him for. And it's still not to what we're used to from Javy on a year-to-year basis. But I think the more intriguing thing to look at, not intriguing, the thing that I want to highlight more is that month by month, okay, in April, the first month of the season, he had an 826 OPS, a 500 slug, and a 296 batting average. Great. Fantastic. May comes along. He has a 432 OPS in the month of May. June comes along, an 808 OPS. July, 672. August, 572. And then September, an 831 with a slugging percentage of over 500 and a batting average of just under 300. This is Javy Baez. And no, you don't want the depths of the 432 OPS and the 230 slugging percentage for a full month. Obviously. Right? And you're paying him to be a little bit better than the 432 OPS in a month. Right? But this is what he is. He is a free swinger that is going to get really hot for periods of time, and he's going to cool off for periods of time. He was really hot for the entire second half of the season with the New York Mets. Wasn't as hot for the Cubs. And if you go year by year, outside of the year that he was like in the top 3 for MVP or whatever, back about 5 years ago for the Cubs, most of his years in Chicago, there's a lot of, maybe not as dramatic as, again, 826 to 432 OPS on a month-to-month basis. But if you break it down to like 2 weeks at a time, 3 weeks at a time, you're talking about serious roller coaster stuff just because of how aggressive of a swinger he is. This is all not new. And I think that is one of the things that this season really highlighted. This is not new. The depths are obviously not what you want it to be, and those are new. But the inconsistencies in the roller coaster of an offensive season that is Javy Baez is not necessarily this brand new thing. Because, again, his style. It's just, in this kind of a similar conversation to what we had with Eduardo Rodriguez, when you pay someone a bigger contract comfortably than anyone else on the team, sans Miguel Cabrera, obviously, people are going to expect a lot out of you. And you should. I'm not saying that's wrong or that is wrongful thinking. You should. The point I want to drive home, and I said this a lot toward the end of the season, I think Javy Baez is beloved in this fan base and is viewed as a really positive asset for this team if he's like the 4th best bat in the lineup. If he's a guy that you look at and you go, okay, you're a wild card. You might give us crazy amount of offense, or you might go 0 for 4 with 4 Ks and they're all on 3 pitches. But we have these 3 other guys that we're comfortable in and that are the real top dogs of the offense, and they're going to show up. And if we get something out of you, that's frosting, right? And if we don't, that's okay. I don't think the philosophy ever should have been, and I don't think it is now in this front office, that Javy Baez is the best hitter on a legitimate contender of a team. I don't think that should be the case going forward. And again, I don't think that's something that this front office currently believes. And that doesn't mean there's not still a role for him. Contrary to popular belief, he can still give you, again, even if, let's say, everything goes opposite of this season in the sense of his role on the team. They bring in more hitters. Torque and Green hit really well. You go into 2023 and Javy is not carrying the workload of being forced to bat second and have the weight of the offense on his shoulders. And this offense can still produce on nights that he doesn't produce, right? And he moves to second, and the throwing errors go down because he moves to second. That's a reality. I'm not saying it's a likely one. I'm not saying it's the one that we're going to see in 6 months, but it is a reality, and it is possible, and it is obtainable. Runners in scoring position. Javy Baez's OPS on the season, 832. He had almost a 500 slugging percentage and almost a 300 batting average with runners in scoring position on the season. Had 137 plate appearances with a runner in scoring position this season and 832 OPS. That is 23% better than league average. It's salvageable, okay? I don't want this to be the apologist because, again, it was bad this year, objectively. All I'm saying is looking forward, I don't expect 2022 to ever happen again. I'm not expecting the MVP caliber Javy, but I'm not expecting 2022 to be a repeat every year. His percentiles were at an all-time low. And there's some other stuff too. His K percentage, 24.9% was his K percentage this season. The last time he had a K percentage that low was 2016. 24.9% K percentage is actually Javy's second lowest K percentage in his entire career. Now, the walk percentage was 4.4. His career average is 4.6. But he actually cut his K rate by 3%. The problem is the hard hit rate dropped by 7%. The barrel percentage dropped by 5.5%. The exit velocity went down almost 3 miles an hour, right? That is where the problem lies. Javy Baez could have all of the same. He's always chased everything. Even his best seasons, his chase rate is really high, his K rate's really high, and his walk rate's really low. We knew what we were getting. This is not, those parts of it are not the surprise. The surprise is the problem with his season was the power fell off the face of the planet. That's been the give and take with Javy. And if there's one thing that you take out of it, out of this episode with breaking down Javy, that is what you should take out of it. If his season is exactly replicated, except the power numbers and the exit velocity and the barrel numbers, the hard hit rate, the power numbers, if they are all on par with his usual self, and everything else is exactly the same, we get what we signed up for. He didn't chase more than he usually does. He didn't strike out more than he usually does. It's the first time you've had to watch it for 162 games, so you were shocked by some of the sliders he was swinging at low and away, right? Which is understandable because they, again, objectively are ridiculous. And I would love for him to not do that. But the biggest factor is just the power. If you just get the pop back, that's it. That's it. No swing and miss, no walk, no strikeout changes, no anything. Copy and paste this season, but with his usual power numbers, and you're talking about a totally different season. I know what we signed up for. All right? And we gave him 6 years, $140 million. If you look at the best teams in baseball, none of their best players are making 140 mil over 6 years. I'm not saying it's a small contract. I'm not saying it's tiny and whatever. That's 23 mil a year AAV. I'm not saying that's a small deal and that he performed up to it or whatever. No, he obviously did not. He put up a 2-win season. We paid him to put up that 4 to 6 win season range. Okay, not even close. But what I am saying is don't expect, if you want to make it easier on yourself, don't go into 2023 expecting an MVP caliber player just because he's the highest paid player not named Miguel Cabrera on the team. That doesn't mean anything. If you compare him to actual good teams, he's not the highest paid player on any of those teams. Okay, same conversation we had with Erod. The move to second base might happen. It might not happen, whatever. If it doesn't happen, buckle up because this year was brutal. I'm just saying all he has to do is for the ball to pop off the bat a little bit faster, and you're talking about a completely different season. Because again, well, we already talked about it. I don't want to keep repeating myself. Okay? So I hope that made sense. It wasn't a slam piece, but it wasn't a praise piece either. I tried to be as real about the situation as possible. And I hope that came across the way I wanted it to. There's still talent there. There's undeniable talent there. But I sure as heck am not going into 2023 expecting him to be an MVP caliber player and be the best player on a team that leads the Tigers into the postseason. Okay? We got a lot of holes on this team. We have a lot of issues to resolve with this team. And I don't think that Javy Baez playing short or second, whichever one you want, whichever one makes it easier to say this sentence, I don't think is like a super high priority. Because it's not a crippling contract. And it doesn't matter if he goes through hot and cold stretches. It doesn't matter if he replicates this season going forward if none of the other 8 players in the lineup can have an OPS over 600 anyways. Okay? I get the frustration. I was just as frustrated as y'all. I promise. A lot of games yelling at my TV. A lot of frustration with Javier Baez. I completely understand it. But it's not just some, like, again, he's a 2-win player this season. And that's like the lowest WAR he's had in a full season in his entire career. I think we can somewhat expect a little bit of a bounce back and a regression back to the mean. Hopefully that made sense. Again, hopefully I tried to be as real about it from all angles as possible. That's my mindset on him. We'll see what happens going forward. A move to second is certainly not out of the question. And again, he should not be your 2-hitter on a good team. That ship has long sailed. If this team is going to be competitive and going to make a deeper run, Javy Baez cannot be your 2-hitter. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every day. For your next listen, check on the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories from around the league, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. That's all I got for you. I think that's all I got. Javy out of the way. There we go. I know. I forgot to close. Bet Online. Be sure to check out Bet Online. They're great. I know he's very controversial. I know everybody has an opinion on Javy. I understand that. Yeah, I hope that I got my point across decently. All right. Again, be sure to vote. I will be. When are we going to record tomorrow? We're probably going to record earlier in the day because I'm doing some stuff with the Detroit News for the election and whatnot. So, yeah, it'll probably have to be a little bit earlier in the day because I'll be doing some coverage. But still, we'll get an episode out and we'll talk about some stuff and there will be some news, I'm sure. And it'll be a fun time. So peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. And I'll catch y'all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.